Natabara, Gauranga, can you ask you a quick question? Was Vidur over here, was he aware or he was in denial? Or means he was not aware of that all these devotees have already left?
Just off the top of my head, I recall that he more or less assumed, but he's asking all these questions because it's like, kind of.
So he's in denial, kind of. I guess he doesn't want to accept that.
I didn't specifically use that.
Okay, thank you.
Vakata Vishagamatmarshi. Kim Vakrita Gishvagamatyamarshi. Kim Vakrita Gishvagamatyamarshi. One more time. Kim Vakrite Kim Vakrite Geshvagamatyamarshi. There, that's the right one. Bhimo hivadirgatamam vyamunchat. Yasyangri patam ranapurna sehe. Margangadayashcharato vichitram. Kim vakrita geshvagamatyamarshi. Bhimo hivadirgatamam vimunchat. Yasyangri patam ranapurna sehe. Margam gadayascharato vichitram. Kim vakrita geshvagamatyamarshi. Bhimo hivadirgatamam vimunchat. Yasyangri patam ranapurna sehe. Margam gadayascharato vichitram. If I could ask you guys to maybe move closer to the middle, just so I can see you all. Kim vakrita geshvagamatyamarshi. Bhimo hivadirgatamam vyamunchat. Yasangri patam ranapurna sehe. Margam gadayascharato vichitram. Kim vakrita geshvagamatyamarshi. Bhimo hivadirgatamam vyamunchat. Yasangri patam ranapurna sehe. Margam gadayascharato vichitram. Oh. Kim vakrita geshvagamatyamarshi. Bhimo hivadirgatamam vyamunchat.
Yasyangri patam ranapurna sehe. Yasyangri patam
Ranapurna sehe.
Margam gadayascharato vichitram. Kim vakrita
Kim Vakrita Geshavagmatyamarshi Bhimo Hivadhirgatamam Vyamunchat Yasyangripatam Ranabhurnasehe Margam Gadayash-charato Vichitram Kim Vakritash-vishvavagatmamarshi Bhimo Hivadhirgatamam Vyamunchat Yasyangripatam Ranabhurnasehe. Kim, whether. Ba, ether. Krita, performed. Ageshu, unto the sinners. Agam, anger. Ati, amarshi, unconquerable. Bhima, Bhima, ahivat, like a cobra. Dirgatamam, long cherished. Vamunchat, has released. Yasya, whose. Angripatam, putting on the steps. Ranabhuhu, field of battle. Na, could not. Sehe, tolerate. Margam, the path. Gadayaha, by the path, by the clubs. Charataha, playing. Vichitram, wonderful. Translation. Please tell me whether the unconquerable Bhima, who is like a cobra, has released his long-cherished anger upon the sinners. The field of battle could not tolerate even the wonderful playing of his club when he stepped on the path. Purport. Vidura knew the strength of Bhima. Whenever Bhima was on the battlefield, his steps on the path and the wonderful playing of his club were unbearable for the enemy. Powerful Bhima did not take steps against the son of Dhritarashtra for a long time. Vidura's inquiry was whether he had yet released his anger, which was like that of a suffering cobra. When a cobra releases its venom after long-cherished anger, its victim cannot survive. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tatati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shirta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tavta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Turubhyashcha Kripa Sinubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bhangam Langayate Girim Yad Kripatam Aham Bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. So today in the Bhagavatam, chapter 3, the status quo. Chapter 1, questions by Vidura, where the Maitreya Rishi is being asked questions by Vidura, who has left the kingdom of the Kauravas due to being insulted and due to his own desire for wanting to do some sort of pilgrimage. And so in this pilgrimage, in this forest, he comes upon a great saint, the sage Maitreya, who was recently with Uddhava. And so now they're speaking, and this is after the battle of Kurukshetra has happened, after Krishna has left, and there's so many great sages, they understand things like physiognomy and the science of telling omens and other things. So they're very in tune with nature, one could say. Like, for example, how did all the sages, like, it's not like there was an internet board or like a Facebook message that gets sent out or a big email blast or someone was calling all their cell phones sending them a text or something. How did they all know to assemble in the forest of Naimisaranya? How did they know all to assemble on the bank of the Ganges? Like, Parikshit Maharaj was going to die, and he said he was going to die in 7 days, and the Bhagavatam was spoken for 7 days. So practically immediately after, practically as soon as he got into the bank of the Ganges, all the sages were there. They knew to come there. And they actually in the start of the Bible, it says like the 3 wise men, they could follow the certain star, and then they found where Jesus was born. And so if you're in touch with nature, if you're in touch, like Krishna says, from within he gives you the knowledge to reach him. So Krishna is always accessible, and for those who are actually in touch with Krishna, in touch with nature, and in touch with omens, there's a science of omens that was more or less common knowledge. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is very expert in this knowledge, and like that, it would become obvious what to do and where to go if there was going to be something super epic like the speaking of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The sages, which were at the caliber to make such a meeting epic, would also have this knowledge, and therefore it would be clear to them, okay, this is going to happen there, and they would know that based off of astrology and knowing the omens and everything. So I forgot my train of thought from that point, but this is about Bhima and anger. So Vidura, the point is that Vidura is asking all these questions. He's seen the omens, so he more or less knows what happened. It describes in the end of the Krishna book and in the Bhagavatam many like terrible omens that happened after Krishna actually left, because actually Krishna's potency was keeping Dwarka Yuga composed, but then as soon as he left, then Kali Yuga could more or less come in full swing. And so at the start of any, when the ages degrade, it's like, there's periods of transition, but then there's also like, definite big omens and significant astrological events. One thing that happens, a lot of comets will fall from the sky. I think it describes like the jackals and asses will like be like crying loud, and all the auspicious animals will be down. And so he knew that there was something bad, and he could probably guess what it was. But so now he's asking all these questions to Maitreya to confirm what he knows. And like it was mentioned in a previous class, it's almost like he's in denial, because of course that's like one of the first stages of trauma, of recovering from trauma, is to be in denial, and then there's acceptance and so on and so forth, and processing. And so when speaking thus, Vidura, whose personal character was esteemed by respectful persons, was insulted by Duryodhana. Oh no, this is the first verse. He left, and we're on the 37th verse. please tell me whether so he's going through all the different devotees talking, talking to Uddhava. Please tell me about the original personalities of Godhead, Krishna and Balaram. Please tell me, Vasudev, how he is doing. Please tell me how's Pradyumna, Aniruddha, like that. Please tell me, the son of Samba, or the son of Jambavati, Samba, who he's known as Samba, or like very close to his mother. Amba means mother, because he was like a really naughty child, but he was like a pet son of his mother, and he was like just doted on too much, so it became a little bit spoiled. So that was one of his funny nicknames, is Samba. Or how does Yuyudan, or Akrura, or we recently heard this week, how is Devaki, how is Aniruddha, how is all the Hridika and Chauradeshna, I'm not sure who those people are, the son of Satyabhama. How is Maharaj Yudhishthir, we heard yesterday, who was protected by, basically his arms were Krishna and Arjuna himself. Now he's asking about Bhima, and he'll ask about the other Pandavas, Arjuna and the twins, Nakula and Sahadev, and Pritha, Queen Kunti. In Dhritarashtra. So he's asking about all these questions. And so he mentions some qualities about Bhima. He's like a cobra did he release his long-cherished anger upon the sinners? And the field of battle could not even tolerate the wonderful playing of his club when he stepped on the path. So Bhima is short, or Bhima Sane. One of his names is Bhima Karma, one who performs Herculean tasks. And another one is Vikrodara. This is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. He's a voracious eater. And so, actually, in the first chapter of the Gita, there's a nice verse where it's showcasing Duryodhana's expert political maneuvers. It was stated yesterday that Duryodhana was actually a great dharmic king. He was actually following mundane dharma very well and was very expert in arranging political affairs. And Prabhupada shows that there's some evidence of that, even in the first chapter of the Gita when he's speaking with different people. So when you're dealing with a political problem, you have to sometimes bring together various circumstances and various situations and people on various levels. So on his side, you have Bhishma, who is the obvious elder, and he wanted him to fight really strong. But you also have Dronacharya, who was also, he was not as elder as Bhishma, but he didn't want Dronacharya to feel left out. If he was just going to say, Bhishma, please fight, to your strongest. So, I want to pull up what he said. So, Prabhupada translates this verse as, our strength this is Duryodhana talking, our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. But before that, before that, he's talking to Dronacharya. Before he mentions that verse, which I want to talk about a little bit, he mentions to Dronacharya, like, the great personalities, he's asking him. So he's like, there's great personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwatthama, and he has different reasons for selecting mentioning specifically these different warriors. But he's able to mention Dronacharya's name first, or mention Dronacharya first, because he doesn't actually mention his name. He just says like you, and then like Bhishma. Because otherwise, if he was going to make a list of people's names, it would have to include Bhishma first, because he's actually the most senior, and the most qualified. And the way that Kshatriyas are qualified is via their strength. And of course, Bhishma has proved his strength so many times. He got it in a tie with Parashuram. So then, later in this verse, he's comparing the strength of Bhishma and Bhima, and what he means to say is our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma. So this makes it seem like he's like making grandfather Bhishma seem very strong, and it might diminish Dronacharya's zeal for fighting in the battle, where the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. So there's a word that's used here that's aparyaptam and paryaptam. So aparyaptam is talking about Bhishma, and paryaptam is talking about Bhima. And then here it's talking about, one thing is paryaptam can mean measurable. So it could be Bhishma's strength is immeasurable and Bhima's is limited, it's measurable. So it's like you can't compare something limited to something unlimited. Or another meaning of paryaptam, which is given in the other Acharya's translations, is actually measurable or sufficient. So therefore, our paryaptam, referring to Bhishma, is meaning is insufficient. So he's then, in this way, he could be looking at Dronacharya and saying, look, at grandfather Bhishma is insufficient. Why is he insufficient? Because he's actually friends with the Pandavas, so he won't try his hardest. So therefore you, Dronacharya, need to try hard. And just with using this little word and maybe a slight little thing, he can actually fire up both parties without either of them feeling offended. And it's a very, very expert, thing to be able to say. So Bhima was one of the main reasons why the Duryodhan and his 99 brothers were like very angry and envious. I mean, the final straw that broke the camel's back before the actual battle of Kurukshetra was when they're in the wonderful assembly hall, and Duryodhan fell into the water that he thought was a floor, and then tried to avoid a floor that he thought was water. And so all the women started laughing at him. And that was like the thing that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But many, many times in their childhood, Bhima was so strong, he would just bully them, and they wouldn't be able to do anything, because even though there were 99 brothers, he was just too strong. So they're always, and for other reasons, they were envious of his opulence. And we'll hear in a bit about the different enemies of the mind, and envy is one of those. So Bhima had this long cherished anger that, like a cobra, like snakes are very interesting. If a cobra is knows something, they got angry at something, and it makes plans to kill it. Cobras are very devious and very, it's said that if you kill the husband or you kill one of the spouse of a snake, of a cobra, it can look into the dead eyes and see the face of the person that killed it, and then it'll dedicate the rest of its life to trying to find that killer, and it'll try to kill them. And somehow the enviousness in the snake will make the venom even more toxic. Like Prabhupada says in the purport, when a cobra releases venom after long cherished anger, its victim cannot survive. So different kinds of people interact with anger in different ways, but a strong person can hold the anger without, an uncontrolled person, as soon as they get angry, they can't do it, But a powerful person like Rupa Goswami is talking about, who's actually qualified to be guru across the whole world, is someone who can tolerate the actions of anger. The actions of anger is how Prabhupada translates it. You tolerate that urge to actually act on the anger, and that toleration is indicative of a Goswami, someone who can control their senses. So Bhima, of course, he's the son of Vayu. So in Tattva, he's related to Hanuman, and indeed Madhavacharya. They're all very similar. And so, of course, he's like a Goswami. So he can control his anger. And the way that this anger was sparked was primarily due to the dice match where Shakuni was the dice thrower, and it was for Duryodhan, and it was a gambling match with Duryodhan and Yudhishthira Maharaj. And the one way that Duryodhan was cheating was by using Shakuni, because Shakuni had these special dice. Originally, Shakuni was in prison with his brothers, and what they would do is they would just feed him enough food for one person for a day. So eventually, if they all shared the food, they would all die. So being a little thoughtful and thinking about this, they say, okay, Shakuni should be the one to live. We're gonna die, and we'll offer our potency unto him. And one thing they did is they put their potency in their bones, and he made dice out of the bones, so that the dice, he could mystically influence it to become whatever he wanted. It's like, a mystic loaded dice. And so by using that, obviously Yudhishthira Maharaj didn't have a chance to win. But according to the according to the Kshatriya Dharma, if you're asked to, battle someone in whatever different ways, you have to accept. And similarly, if someone comes to you, a woman comes to you for marriage, you also have to accept, which we'll hear about how this happened to Bhima. And so, after Yudhishthira Maharaj had lost his whole kingdom, lost all his wealth, then it came that, okay, what else do you want to wager? Like double or nothing. Okay, 100 coins, 200 coins, 1,000 coins, 10,000 coins. And it kept going up. Okay, the whole kingdom. And he kept losing. Okay, what do you want to wager? Okay, I'll wager this and that. And finally he's, okay, I'll wager Draupadi, his wife. And so after the Shakuni threw the roll, of course the roll was, it defeated. It did whatever it needed to do. So then what happened was, they said, okay, call for Draupadi. And Dushashan, the eldest brother of Duryodhan, grabbed Draupadi by the hair and dragged her out. And she was actually in her in her time of the month. So she was dressed more or less just in a very basic dress, and no makeup or anything. And he forcibly grabbed her by the hair, which is completely ridiculous in back then, especially back then in that culture, for a man to go and do that, and forced her into the assembly. And this is when all the Dronacharya, Bhishma Dev, and everyone, they refused to stand up for protecting Draupadi, and they were very confused in what this should actually be done. And so then Duryodhan says, okay, Draupadi, come sit on my lap, and he slaps his thigh, like where he wanted her to sit. And so then Bhima, he gets so angry, he's like, I'm going to kill every last one of you. He's talking to all the brothers and Dushashan, I'm going to rip your heart out, drink the blood, and I'm going to, you're not going to, I'm going to completely remove your thigh, that where you smacked. You'll never be able to use that again. And he makes these vows. When a Kshatriya wants to show their prowess, they make a vow, because that's also another thing of Kshatriya Dharma. You can never go against your vow. So if you make a vow, it's very serious, and everyone has to respect it and take it seriously. And so, Bhima Karma, one who performs Herculean tasks. One of these Herculean tasks, Prabhupada mentions in the purport, he killed him in Hidimba. So the story of how that happened was, when they were exiled from their kingdom after losing it in the gambling match, they went to a forest, and this demon ended up smelling him, and he said, okay, I'm going to drink their blood and eat them. And he sent his sister, Hidimbi, to go kill them and bring their dead bodies so he could have his lunch. So the demoness, the Rakshasi, is going, and then she sees, they're all sleeping, besides Bhima's keeping guard, he stayed up. And then she sees Bhima, and she's very attracted. Bhima's very handsome, he's very muscular, he's a Kshatriya. And so, instantly she decides she wants to make him her husband. And she's figuring, according to Stri Dharma, the Dharma of women, you have to follow what your brother says, but if your husband says something that disagrees with your brother, then you follow what your husband says. So she says, and she also is thinking, if I kill him now, I can enjoy eating his body, and that will be a short enjoyment. But if I marry him, then we can enjoy forever. And that's what everyone thinks when they want to embark on a sensual relationship, is they think that they can enjoy forever. But anyways, she was right. She could enjoy it for longer than just one time. And so she's talking to Bhima and explaining her desire, and that, you know, she can really help them out. She's a demoness. She has all these mystic powers. She can fly them around. She can take them to these like mystical regions where men can't normally go. And then she says, I'll take care of my brother. I'll like help take you guys all away. And the Bhima's like, take us all away. No Rakshasa can do any injury to anyone while I'm around. You know, even if all the Rakshasas come right now, they're no match for my strength. And he was so sure of that. And this is because he's known as Vikrodra, a voracious eater. So he was always eating, and the way he became so strong, I mean, he was already unnaturally strong, being the son of Vayu, who is the strongest of all demigods. But one time Duryodhana and his plans to actually kill him fed him a whole feast full of enough poison to kill hundreds of men. But instead of killing him, it just made him sleepy. So he slept it off. With his such strong digestion, the poison didn't really affect him that much. He was just sleepy. And then he ended up, Duryodhana and his brothers, while he was sleeping, tied him up and threw him into the river. And they sunk to the bottom of the river, where there just happened to be like a whole civilization of Nagas, of like snake people. And they started biting the heck out of him. And somehow, like if you get bit by a scorpion, they say like some of that venom treated medicinally can actually become the best antidote to the poison. So somehow also the Nagas biting him, their poison counteracted the poison that was fed to him. And then he ended up meeting their king Vasuki, and he was telling him how, all right, I want to help you out. I think Bhima maybe married one of the Naginis there. I can't remember clearly, but also Vasuki wanted to help him out. So I want to give you these 8 pots of nectar, which, they're so powerful. Actually, some medicine is so powerful it can actually harm you if you don't digest it properly. Like Prabhupada, the Vedic doctor wanted to give him Markardhwaj, which is like a very heavy, strong medicine. But he didn't want to give it to him in the summer, so he said, Prabhupada, please wait, just keep taking these simple herbs. This was near the end of Prabhupada's manifest pastimes here. And when it comes winter time, then your digestion will get stronger. Then I'll give you this Makardwaj, then you can become, much stronger. This will really help you. And so, but if you would take the Makardwaj and you can't digest it, then it could possibly kill you. So the same with this is very powerful nectar that he wanted to give. Each pot, he had 8 pots to give Bhima, and each pot would give you the strength of 10,000 elephants. And so he just would drink. It said he drank each pot in one breath, like one gulp. Just glug, 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 and just had them all like it was nothing. And then they let him sleep, and he ended up sleeping for 8 days. But then he woke up and he returned back, and they gave him a bunch of fine garments, and he returned back and told the story to all the Pandavas, and they're all amazed. So he's very, very strong. So he's not worried about any kind of Rakshasa. And then the Rakshasa, while he's waiting for his sister to bring back these dead bodies to eat, he's getting impatient because it's taking too long. So he comes and he sees what's happening, and he's like, okay, sister, I'm going to kill you. And then Bhima's like, no, well, I'm right here. And he's also, you better not wake up my brothers, otherwise I'm going to be really mad. So what Bhima does, the Rakshasa rushes at him. He just grabs him and just drags him like a mile away, just so they don't make enough, too much noise to wake up his family. But then obviously they're like ripping trees apart and like being very loud, beating each other up, and everyone gets awake. But after Yudhisthira and Arjuna warn him that the demon will actually become more powerful after twilight, the demons actually get stronger in the evening because there's somehow the modes of nature change, and their mystic powers get highly amplified, and they can perform like these preposterous illusions. So you often hear that in the Bhagavatam. When Dhruva Maharaj is fighting a bunch of Rakshasas, he's warned like that. I can't remember the other one, but there's multiple in the Bhagavatam. And so he gets him and he just rips him in half. and that's that. The demon is done, and then he ends up marrying the sister, and they have a son, Gatotkacha, who actually ends up being very important in helping saving Arjuna's life and helping Arjuna win, because Karna had a special Shakti weapon that was like you couldn't block it, you couldn't defeat it, but he could only use it once, and so he fired it at Arjuna, but Gatotkacha ended up taking it for Arjuna, like a Secret Service agent, jumping in front of the president for taking a bullet, and so. So that's one of the Herculean tasks that Bhima Karma did, and in killing all the, it says the field of battle could not tolerate even the wonderful playing of his club when he stepped on the path. So normally when people go to battle, they battle in chariots, and Bhima sometime would go in a chariot with a bow and arrow, but he was mostly known when he really wanted to fight, he would just be on his 2 feet with a mace, with a club, and it said that when he was fighting, he was so strong that they would shoot arrows at him and they wouldn't barely even be able to pierce his skin. Like that's how strong he was. And each day, whoever of the 100 Kauravas, he just made a specific plan. He just wanted to kill all the 100 Kauravas. So in the 18 days of the battle, he just keeps going through all the different Kauravas, killing them, trying to uphold his vow. And he made sure, like, any of you come across and start fighting with the Kauravas, like, don't fight them, leave them for me. And so he ended up doing it. He killed 98 of them, and then it was left with Dushashan, who was Duryodhana's, the next oldest. And like he had vowed, he took it and performed the ghastly act of drinking his blood from his heart that he ripped out. And then, of course, in the Bhagavatam, it's described how Duryodhana was killed there. And after the battle, they're fighting on the side, and Duryodhana had his mother, Madri, was the mother of Duryodhana? Gandhari. She had mystic powers from covering her eyes for so long. Gandhari? Yeah. She had mystic powers, like, the way to get mystic powers is more or less to control your senses. If you read it in the Bhagavad Gita, it says you just basically sit somewhere and breathe, and you get mystic powers somehow. So she was controlling that sight. Because she was a chaste husband. Part of Sri Dharma is to follow your husband. So she covered her eyes because her husband is blind, and she lived as a blind person. And that somehow blessed her with like a great potency in her sight. So she knew that, and she knew how to bestow that. So she thought, okay, let my son come here. I'll make him invincible. So she told him to come naked. And then how he was going, he was just walking completely naked. And Krishna was like, yo, Duryodhana, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm going to go see my mom. He's like, what? You're going to see your mother and you're completely naked? At least you should put on a little gumcha or something like that here. And he gave him a gumcha, and Duryodhana got confused. Normally he would just completely listen. If his mother said something, especially in Vedic times, if the parents asked something, there's no question. Like, they were like actually dharmic and would follow things like to the T. But Krishna confused him. He said, okay, yeah, you're right. I should wear a gumcha in front of my thing. So she sees Gandhari, she takes off her thing, and she was going to like somehow scan him with her eyes, and it would like make everything, crystalline hard and invulnerable. But then she sees he's wearing a gumcha, and she's just like, she was a devotee of Krishna. This must be Krishna's dealing. I can't go against what fate goes. So he's going to die. She knew it was hopeless to try to protect her. Just like, even though Dhritarashtra knew it was like hopeless for his sons to actually do anything, he was still just attached. So he was always trying to go with their different ploys and their different plots. And at the end, he gives up all that attachment and ends up, doing meditation with Gandhari and going back to Godhead. But they had to do it the hard way, I guess. And so then the way that Duryodhana dies is that they're fighting. And of course, Duryodhana has been trained by Balaram. One of Balaram's name is Duryodhana Guru. And so even though Duryodhana is not as strong as Bhima, Duryodhana, of course, is the son of Dhritarashtra. And as such, he's endowed with incredible strength. There's often said he has the strength of 10,000 elephants. But Bhima's is, is even more strong. So where they were unmatched in strength, Duryodhana had the skill. So having the finesse and the skill can kind of amplify your ability. And so in that way they were like equally matched. And then on top of that, even if Bhima would just with his raw strength be able to like force a blow, it wasn't doing anything to Duryodhana. But every time Duryodhana would use his skill and get a nice, agile hit, it was so Bhima was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like he's just gonna keep hitting me, and every time I hit him, nothing happens. So Krishna like gave him a hint, like so then he got it, and he ended up, you're not supposed to hit below the belt, but also in war there are no rules. So he ended up breaking his, femur or something like that, because that's where he was vulnerable, because the gamcha was going from the waist to the knees, and then doing that, then Duryodhana more or less just like that's how he died, just with a broken leg, couldn't do anything, and I guess slowly withered away. And so. Anger, it's saying that he had his long cherished anger, which he was able to control and then release in the proper way. And so when we hear the different shastras, we hear so many times Prabhupada saying there's, the mind is our enemy or our friend. Krishna is telling Arjuna that. And so there's like kind of 6 enemies of the soul, or you could say 6 ways which the mind is your enemy, or 6 things which the mind wants to do. So when Rupa Goswami in Upadeshamrita, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udara Pasta Vegam. So he's saying Vacho Vegam, the urge to speak, that's something. Then Manasa, so the mind, the urges of the mind, the demands of the mind. So the mind has different ways, and he could have, Rupa Goswami he's getting all the hundreds of thousands of verses and all the different shastras and Upanishads and everything, and he's condensing it down into 11 verses. And he could have just left it at Manasa. He didn't need to say Krodha, because Krodha is included in the demands of the mind. The demands of the mind: Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. But he could have maybe said Kama or some other thing. But he said Krodha, so anger. And I don't know if what you guys have any ideas of why Rupa Goswami may have said Krodha instead of Kama or instead of some other things. Why is anger so important to put when you're condensing everything into 11 verses? You have a lot to say, so each thing is very important. Every syllable counts. So why include anger?
Is it because anger brings up everything else, lust and envy?
No, I haven't heard exactly like that. Anger, if you read in the Gita, lust comes anger. Lust is the father of anger. Krishna says, when you're meditating on the objects of the senses, then a desire to achieve, a desire to get them, arises, which is lust. And then actually from not getting that, if you get it, then you're happy. Sometimes if you get it, you might also not be happy. You might realize your desire was stupid, and then you'll be angry. But not getting what you want, in that's really kind of the cause of anger. It's born from unsatisfied lust and caused by ahankar. It's considered to be in the mode of ignorance or leading to ignorance. And it's able to increase unlimitedly and cannot really be checked, and it's dreadful to everyone. These are different statements in the Bhagavatam, when I did a research on the Krodha. And what this one devotee, senior devotee, has said about anger is that it's very important to control anger, specifically in preaching. See, Rupa Goswami the reason why they're writing everything down is because they want to preach. They want to preach Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya wanted them to preach. So, in part of their instructions, the nectar of instruction is to like make people preachers. So when you're preaching, it's very important to control the anger. If we went out there, there's so many crazy people going out there doing so many crazy things, and we would just get angry at them for being so sinful and different things. It wouldn't make any sense. We would never make any progress. If anyone came here and we were impatient with them or couldn't tolerate, what offenses they might unknowingly be committing and things like that, it makes it difficult to preach. And also one of the things I was contemplating was that actually to control your anger is very necessary to avoid offending devotees, because that's actually, you can get all this knowledge, you can make all this advancement in spiritual life, but then it's all for nothing if you end up offending devotees. Mahaprabhu says it's the mad elephant offense. So if you can't control your anger and you get into some, anything with a devotee, and then you offend them, it's very bad. And so in the Premi Bhakti Chandrika, Narottam Das Thakur explains all these different enemies. Besides Matsarya or envy, they can actually be engaged in Krishna service. Matsarya or envy is the only one he doesn't mention. And so how do we utilize these different ones? So like maybe we want to try to go through these. How do you engage kama in Krishna's senses? Kama. Maybe I gave it away. How do you engage kama? In the service of Krishna. It's mentioned in Prema Bhakti Chandrika, if you guys have read that song in that book that does that, but maybe you've heard this before. Or you could just have like an idea. You have an idea?
How to use kama?
Yeah. So there's lust, you're contemplating on the objects of the senses or something like that. And Narottam Das Thakur says. One way obviously is if you have Krishna conscious children, but that's what Prabhupada says a lot of times. Get married and raise children, and that's the one way to deal with that, with lusty desires. But then also Narottam Das Thakur is saying, like, be lusty to satisfy Krishna's senses, which maybe that's like a high ideal. But what about lobha or greed? He says, be greedy for hearing Krishna katha, or moha, being illusion. Be when someone goes crazy and just can't, be an illusion when you don't attain Krishna. Like it said that our Acharya, the guru of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji, he would just jump into the cold water of the Ganges and just chant, and he was like saying like, Krishna, unless like you reveal yourself to me today, I'm not coming out of the water. And that was his like, the intensity of his bhajan. We may not be able to become like that crazy and that, pushing. But at least this is what Narottam Das Thakur is saying. And how to engage mada, or madness. And he says, become mad in performing kirtan. That we can do, if you just enthusiastically, singing loud, dancing exuberantly. This is what the devotees do, and it creates a very strong atmosphere. And so how do we utilize anger? It said here, Bhishma killed, has he released his long-cherished anger upon the sinners, or these people that offended his wife Draupadi, offended the devotees, and blasphemed Krishna. So we utilize our anger against those who offend the devotees or blaspheme Krishna. Like in 55th Street, they had a special code. Someone at the front door, if any trouble came by, they just push a little button. Narsinghadev, can you come to the front desk? And then that was code. A few big guys, devotees, knew that all right, there was trouble. So they would come down and take care of whatever was there. And then oftentimes it required roughing someone up, or I also heard when they were sometimes distributing books in the airport. Back then it was sometimes they might mess with some there might be this kind of little nerdy book distributor Stick Arm, whatever, Brahmachari or something, and some person might mess with them, And so if the other, there'd be some bigger book distributors that heard about our devotees there, and they heard about that, they would like find who the guy was, they would just like, two of them would grab him, throw him into a closet and like knock him up a couple times and then say, you're never gonna do that again, and then like bring him out. And anyways, not that we can exactly copy that, but we should definitely, that's like the way to utilize our anger. If anger is building up, we should be able to control it. And it's said that it can keep building up unlimitedly. And sometimes, different things need an outlet. Otherwise, if the person gets too, they'll go crazy if they don't actually process these different demands of the man, the demands of the mind. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness. The Acharyas and Prabhupada is given all the ways to do all this. And there's only 1 minute and 40 seconds. So maybe Maharaj, you want to say something, or anyone has a question or comment? Yeah, I like the Mahabharata. It's very interesting. I can totally like envision like you're growing up as a kid. Like we watch all these cartoons, but it's actually demoniac. It's like the demons have stolen like the epicness of the itihasas and try to feed it to kids, because kids need, like, they want something epic like that. Where instead of actually hearing about Bhima and about the Pandavas and about the Ramayana, they're just hearing about completely false things that are just stories, and plus they're being written by demons, so they're just being taught demoniac things, demoniac tendencies. Like as a kid, I loved Dragon Ball Z, which is it's like, just a bunch of guys fighting, and there's no real point to it. But if I use that same desire to like hear the Mahabharata as a little kid, and actually my imagination can like put together all the things of hearing it, then you get a very strong mind, and it's like very like, you can just get the whole village and all the kids together and hearing that. And so this is actually like culture. This is what should be happening. Like kids should be hearing the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. They shouldn't be watching cartoons and reading all these like, nonsense things. What do you think about that, Dian?
Yeah. What was that outlet for anger? Did you mention it, or did you just say
Yeah, against the devotee, against people that blaspheme devotees or blaspheme Krishna, offenders of the devotees. That's that. You use your anger against them. You get angry at them. Like I was staying like in 55th Street, and it would be two big guys, and to fight someone you have to be angry. You can't fight someone if you're not angry. Or like Arjuna uses anger against the whole, or like Hanuman uses anger against the whole Lanka, like that. Arjuna uses anger against all the millions and billions of fighters on the battlefield, Kurukshetra.
So they're just angry until they can find someone to use their anger against?
No, they control their anger. It's like, if you can control your anger, like, it's there, but you don't have to be angry. But you're holding it, that thing is there, the demand for action is there, and then it can get released. It's like a burning ember. Maharaj.
Anger is a tremendous energy, lust also. So it's like, electricity can become a freezer.
Yeah.
Freeze. You have to convert it. So we're angry at the people that are demoniac and spreading it. So we preach more. We do more harina. We distribute more books. We use that anger instead of just thinking, kill one person. What's the use?
Kill their demoniac tendency.
You get that energy, channel it into something worthwhile. Same thing with lust. Turning lust into love. That's the one book.
A desire to please Krishna, then that's, if you desire to please yourself, it's very, short-lived.
Against those who are atheists and blaspheming Krishna, not that we'll just try to kill them or burn down their.
Yeah, that's right. I should have mentioned that.
Preach. Just get out there. Get your feet on the ground.
Kill their demoniac tendency.
Hit the road.
Okay, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Bhima Sen ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai, Gaur Premanandi.
Streets not budging on the blue key.